Only Murders in the Building, Season 5.
The hit Hulu original is back.
The night Buster died, he was talking with this mobster.
Was he killed in a hit?
We need to go face to face with the mob.
Get ready for a season
Buongiorno, signore.
Oh, this is how I die.
you can't refuse.
You're gonna save the day, like you always do, by being smart, sharp, and almost always by mistake.
The Hulu original series, Only Murders in the Building, premieres September 9th. Streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply. New episodes Tuesdays.
This episode is brought to you by FXX and Hulu. Futurama returns on September 15th, blending heartfelt moments with razor-sharp humor while accidentally saving the day. The Planet Express crew is back, defying gravity and common sense. From the creator of The Simpsons comes 10 new episodes where the romance is hotter, the threats are bigger, and the action hits harder. Don't miss the all-new season of Futurama returning September 15th at 8 p.m. Watch it on FXX or stream it on Hulu.
Hey, I'm Candice Lim.
And I'm Kate Lindsay, and you're listening to ICYMI,
In case you missed it.
Slate's podcast about internet culture. And I'll be honest, there have been a lot of shocking things on the timeline these past few weeks. But there's one specifically I want to talk about today and ask if you've seen, Candice, which is Serena Williams advertising being on a GLP-1.
Whew, I've seen this. Man, it sits so weird in my soul. It just sits so weird. I mean, basically, in August, Serena Williams decided to come out as kind of like the campaign person for Roe. It is a GLP-1 medication. You know, this is Ozempic, but from a different type of pharmacy. And it's photos of her kind of like fake injecting herself. You know, there was a selfie of her that went kind of viral a few weeks prior to that of her just looking crazy shredded. But obviously the comments are asking like, Ozempic allegations? And yeah, it's so weird. I'm stunned, and I actually still don't know where I land. What about you?
Yeah, I think this just got a big old sigh from me. It's like,
Right.
Again, we come back on this kind of line over and over. It's like, I'm not going to tell anyone else what to do with their body. I don't want to shame individuals for their choices. And so the sigh is not necessarily at Serena, but it's at like, where are we at in the world that someone, an athlete like Serena Williams, is taking these medications?
Exactly. And I think there's like there are some moments of ickiness that I've been thinking about. The first being, you know, her husband is Alexis Ohanian. He's the founder of Reddit. He is an investor and on the board of Roe. So that's kind of weird to me. But on top of that, I was looking in the comments of when she announced she was in this campaign. People like Naomi Campbell are in there with like supporting her, kind of seeing like they're praising her. But then there are other comments of people being like, I hate that you do this. But my question ends up being like, well, she was going to do it anyway. So would it have been better for her not to tell us? Or would it have been better for her to like, you know, get this deal and just like come out with it before it got too big and the allegations outgrew it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the episode we did about plastic surgery and, you know, like Kylie Jenner posting exactly what she got for her boob job and everyone being like, wow, this is such refreshing honesty. Like, it's just a new... This is just the new trend of how we talk about this stuff, which is just being really upfront about it. And we can pretend that that's like new or refreshing, but it's not, because it is all like built upon the same structural pressures that are telling everyone, again, even an extremely incredible, accomplished athlete, that they need to be smaller.
Exactly. And look, I think this is one of those watershed moments where I really had to like pause and step back and think like, okay, what is really triggering me emotionally? And I think one of the things that's making me question is like, I kind of thought we were past this. Like, I kind of thought Serena Williams was one of the people leading this charge of like, there are different bodies, there are stronger bodies, there are bodies that look different than yours, but they are still beautiful. And we sit in that and we praise it. And for her to take on this campaign, it almost seemed like the antithesis to that. There was a quote that I still really can't believe that I think about a lot, where she says on joining the campaign, she's like, I wasn't able to get to the weight I needed to be postpartum. And I was like, needed to be? But like, you're retired. Like, who is telling you you need to be this? Because I thought you were telling us we don't need to be this.
And also to bring in like the whole like postpartum body element to this.
Right.
This is a trifecta, a chef's kiss of like weird and complicated body topics all rolled into one convenient product that, her husband benefits from us buying.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've been thinking about this already and just kind of the way I feel about the body positivity movement because, for example, like a few weeks ago, I was at a Nordstrom.
Okay, yeah.
A part of me was like, should I name names? And I was like, I'm doing it.
Name names.
I was at Nordstrom and I was just, looking through the sale rack. This is me being transparent. I was looking through the sales rack and I was just kind of like browsing and I overhear a customer come up to a sales associate and the customer asks, "Hi, where are your plus size 10, size 12 clothes?" And the sales associate says, "I'm so sorry, we don't carry those anymore." And I could not turn around and look because I was about to cry.
Anymore. That's the key word, too.
Yeah. There were two things going on. The first being, like, first off, size 10 and 12.
Right, yeah.
Like, a lot of women, most women, live in that body. And therefore, Nordstrom, you want to sell clothes, sell the clothes people want and need. But on top of that, I could feel this older woman having the shame that I had as a teen. And it kind of just made me feel like it never stops, does it? It never stops, right?
And what a vulnerable position to put someone in that they have to even like have that interaction. I've witnessed similar things in stores of people having to make these requests that can feel really vulnerable. And it's just like what you experience and then what we're seeing with Serena Williams. Both of these are like data points that I know have gotten a lot of people's spidey senses tingling about like, wait, what happened to body positivity? Like you and I, Candice, we both kind of came of age in this era of like all bodies are beautiful, celebrate yourself no matter the size. And it's like suddenly everywhere I look, that's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And the question is like, where did it go? Where does that energy go? Does that mean that the movement is dead? Is there another cycle coming? And like, honestly, whose fault is it? But also whose shoulder and burden is it on to like spread the message still, fight for it? Because honestly, it feels like there's so much going against us, you know?
Well, I'm really excited because the guest that we have on today's episode is actually someone who can answer a lot of those questions. After the break, is the body positive movement dead? And how GLP-1s like Ozempic feel like the final nail in the coffin.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I love going through Saks.com because it is so easy to find new arrivals from my favorite designers, and I get a lot of inspiration for my personal style. With fall coming up, I think it's time for reinvention. I think it's time for a wardrobe refresh. So I've been going on Saks.com because I have my eye on a few Jenny Kane sweaters, and thank God they have them all in stock. But that's my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. Whether it's a date night, a vacation, a special occasion, or just lounging in style, Saks helps you find the perfect look for every occasion. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby! Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hey there. While you are enjoying today's episode, I want you to also think about heading on over to the top of our show page to hit Try Free, which subscribes you to Slate Plus. Now, on Slate Plus, you get bonus episodes. You get ad-free episodes, but most importantly, next week, you get the second episode of our book club in which we are reading Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. I've already started reading the book. It is a wild ride. It is essentially about the author, Naomi Klein, and this other writer, Naomi Wolf. Very different writers and yet constantly confused for one another, especially online. And Naomi Klein uses the book to both explore her identity through the lens of this person she's often mistaken for, but also to dive into the world of conspiracy that this other Naomi often inhabits. If you are already a Slate subscriber, thank you so much. And please feel free to give us feedback. What's the next book we should read? We need ideas. But if you haven't, again, you can do so by clicking try free at the top of our show page or head on over to slate.com/ICYMI plus. And we're back, and joining us for today's conversation is Virgie Tovar. Welcome to the studio, Virgie.
Thank you for having me.
Virgie, you have been writing about this space for a while. You also recently have come out with a new podcast called GLP-1 Truth Serum, and it explores the GLP-1 industry in ways that I'd never even thought about, like how it is prescribed to children or how it interacts with eating disorders. I already had complicated feelings about the drug, but this podcast really reveals that it is a true minefield. And today we are kind of talking in general about something that we've done a few episodes about in more specific ways, whether it's to do with like plastic surgery or like a body positive influencer going on a weight loss drug. But we've never really talked in general about this feeling that seems to be taking over the internet, that body positivity as an internet movement feels kind of over. And so I guess this is something you write a lot about. I'd love maybe to hear from you just like a state of the union on body positivity right now. Like, where are we at? What are the vibes? What are the vibes?
Well, it's funny because it feels the way that it did before the explosion. This movement really came out of fat activism. And I think that's, I want to say, caveat that even in and of itself is a controversial statement. I think there are people who would say that's not true. It was always its own discrete movement. But in my opinion, the explosion that you and I saw really came out of fat activism, which has been around since the 1960s, and really was more of a niche movement. It was much more super lefty. It had a lot of elements that drew from Black power, from queer liberation and queer separatism. And so to me, it feels like a return to that fever pitch. Like before the fever pitch happened, it was more of a small movement that you found out about by mouth. I mean, obviously, timeline-wise, social media didn't exist yet. So it feels a little bit like that to me. And I think in some ways, and I'll be honest, this is my hot take, I think we're not walking but running into a crisis as a culture where body positivity is yet again going to, I think, save a lot of people's lives and their mental health. And I think things coming out of the GLP-1 frenzy or the GLP-1 gold rush, as you might hear it called, I think they're going to be a lot worse for the people who would maybe have opted in or maybe did opt in and then decided to maybe detour with GLP-1s.
When I was looking, it was around like 2021. Something interesting is that it kind of, the moment this drug comes about, creators, public figures who are openly either plus size, body positive, they start getting targeted by these companies to basically work with them and promote the product and by extension lose weight. And so this happened to you, and that's kind of how you kick off the podcast. What was that experience like? Like, how much outreach was there? Like, I want to, because to me, it's like, how do they even begin that email?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like that neighbor who's always hanging around waiting for you to have your worst day or something.
Yeah.
That was the vibe of it. Yeah. It was like a cold call type of like, oh, hey, we know of you, but we don't know anything about you. And we were wondering. I mean, it was very much that cold approach almost. Like there was an anonymity to it, but then there was a frequency kind of just kept following up over and over and over. And I get pitched all the time. It's very unusual to get pitched 5, 6, 7, 8 times with no expressed interest,
Yeah, and like one of the things, there's so many telling moments that come out of this email. One being something like this assumption that people were only body positive because there wasn't a miracle drug like this. And now that there is, obviously, everyone's going to want to lose weight. So there's like that weird mindset that's coming in. But then there's like, because to find someone like you online, if they weren't already aware of your work, they need to use keywords and like, and so they're looking up people who are like proudly plus size, proudly body positive, and targeting them. And I think the predatory nature of the advertising of this stuff reveals a lot of the true intent. Like I know, Candice, you've seen it places. We see it on Reddit a lot in forums where you're snarking about whether or not this influencer is on Ozempic. You're scrolling, and then in between those posts, it's like, hey, do you want to try Ozempic? Like it is such a weird meta experience.
Yeah. I would say that, Virgie, you wrote this Substack that I really love that basically asks, like, is GLP-1 marketing attacking our mental health? And there are so many good gems in there, but I guess I'll start here, which is the fact that I really feel like the body positive movement was able to thrive on places like Instagram and social media because in an era of mainstream media pushing like the thinnest celebrities, the size 2 girls, social media became the place where you could escape all of that. It was a safe space, this safe haven for body positive influencers, people who looked more like us. And it had a good run. It had a good run until the GLP-1 companies realized, oh, that's where we go. That is the first place we go. That's the first place we target. And one of those examples is definitely like NYC influencer snark and how like I literally will go on there all the time and see people like accusing someone of having Ozempic allegations. Then they're selling me Ozempic. And I think the nefariousness of it is the fact that GLP-1 companies are smarter than I think. They know where to find people at their most insecure. And I just find that so interesting. But one part of your Substack I wanted to ask you about is you said that most of the companies that approached you about doing brand deals with them for GLP-1 drugs, they were actively aligned with your stated commitment to body positivity and weight neutrality. I wanted to ask, what did that alignment look like? What was it? The language they were using? Was it the bodies they featured in their ads? How'd you know that they were kind of aligned with you in their head?
I mean, let's see. In the emails, they were just talking about the transformation for me. Like they want me to showcase my transformational journey. So there wasn't a lot of stuff in the emails, but when I think about the marketing overall, there are all kinds of things they've done. I mean, and it's funny, right? Like even on the subway ride over here, I saw a GLP-1 ad and I was like, you should take a picture of that because they're going to say that ad never existed. They're going to say they never made that promise. I remember at the top of 2024, so January 24 for me, was like game on. It was like the intense fist of GLP-1 weight loss came down on the United States so hard. And I remember them saying things like, we're going to eradicate weight stigma, or insinuating that they were going to eradicate weight stigma. I remember even, and I mean, there's stuff that I have that's embargoed / maybe never made it into the public eye, but that I saw as a journalist where I was like, wait a minute, what? You guys are going to run a bunch of ads that talk about how life-threatening weight stigma is, and then you're going to say that GLP-1s are the solution to social stigma. I seem to recall them even saying, like, we're going to eradicate weight stigma. And I remember being very alarmed, right? Because it's like, what do you mean? Like, and I'm like, oh, do you mean eugenics? Like, is that your value prop? Like, your value prop is MF eugenics? I think that, and again, as someone who is a journalist, I'm like, who is covering this? Why isn't anyone covering that eugenics is a value prop that's being promoted? And so I think, because I mean, the whole idea was we're going to eradicate weight stigma ... by eradicating every last fat person. That's what it seemed like it was saying.
Well, that's another part of this like predatory, sinister marketing where it's like they're using language that they learned from the body positivity movement of like, this is about loving yourself. This is about like, but it reminds me of sort of around the same time of body positivity, this included like not shaving, and then there were these razor companies attempting to somehow be okay with you not shaving while trying to sell their razors. And it's like fundamentally, it's like, well, what you do is fundamentally incompatible with that movement. And so that it creates, so it is, it's like, what do you mean? But I think when you talk about eugenics and what they're promoting, maybe I want to dive into that a little bit. Like, what do we mean when we say eugenics?
Yeah, I guess I mean when I hear the phrase, we're going to eradicate weight stigma, and my thought is, okay, so you clearly are not promoting the end of the social problem. You, in fact, are making money from fat phobia.
Right.
So then what has to go? You guys are not getting rid of fat phobia. You're monetizing fat phobia. So then the only other thing that would have to go would be actual fat bodies.
Yeah.
And so as someone who feels very strongly that the data suggests that body diversity is real, that fat bodies are just as legitimate as any other body. To me, when you say we're going to basically get rid of weight stigma, and you mean we're going to make every fat person into a thin person, that qualifies to me as eugenics, right? This idea that the thin body is the only real body, it's the only healthy body, it's the only legitimate body, and it's the only body that society wants to see, including these extremely well-funded pharmaceutical companies.
We'll continue our conversation with Virgie Tovar after the break.
Ford Blue Cruise hands-free highway driving takes the work out of being behind the wheel, allowing you to relax and reconnect, while also staying in control. Enjoy the drive in Blue Cruise-enabled vehicles like the F-150, Explorer, and Mustang Mach-E. Available feature on equipped vehicles. Terms apply. Does not replace safe driving. See Ford.com/Blue Cruise for more details.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
This episode is brought to you by Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels and music are made for each other. They share a rhythm in the craft of making something timeless, while being a part of legendary nights. From backyard jams to sold-out arenas, there's a song in every toast. Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Jack Daniels and Old No. 7 are registered trademarks. Tennessee whiskey, 40% alcohol by volume. Jack Daniel Distillery, Lynchburg, Tennessee.
And we're back. And there are so many lenses through which we can have this conversation. But, given that we are an internet culture podcast, as someone who's just sort of a casual scroller and observer, the thing that's been remarkable to me is we hear that all the time, that thin is back in, but what that actually means for real people, even beyond obviously the intense emotional and self-esteem issues that creates, is there are a lot of because I feel like I come at a lot of things just from a creator lens because that's what we cover. There are a lot of creators who were able to make a living out of this spreading body positivity, but not even just being able to have that body as creators and brands because it was trendy working with them. But now they're finding those opportunities are drying up. And I actually want to play a clip of a creator who I love called Joanna Spicer. This is from a little earlier last week, and she's coming on and she's kind of having a moment, and she's not necessarily talking about the fall of the body positivity movement specifically, but she's talking about that something has happened to her career. And I just want to play this specific part of it because it really illuminated for me just what these ripple effects can be.
It's been hard to see other people who are younger and thinner and prettier you know, live the life I want, the life I was living at one point. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, I don't know what I did. I don't know why brands don't want me anymore. It's like, because it's not trendy to be plus size anymore because I'm 35. I don't know, but it's been hard not to have this like huge identity crisis about it.
And so you hear that, and you hear that not only is this trend hurting people emotionally, it's like hurting their livelihood just for having this body. And then back to the predatory nature, they get an email in their inbox from a brand that does want to work with them. And it is a GLP-1.
Yeah, no, I'm really loving that you're using the P word. I think that's exactly predatory is exactly what it is. And I think we need to be honest. I mean, I really want to speak to what this person is talking about because I can feel it in my body. We have these words like trends. We have that are very separate from the human reality of what we're talking about here. To your point, what I always remind people is that we're talking about vulnerable populations. Yeah. When you're talking about a person in a larger body, you are talking about someone who has experienced weight discrimination, they've experienced wage-based discrimination, they've experienced fashion-based discrimination, dating, they've been treated differently at school than their other sort of schoolmates. These are people who are marginalized. Yeah. And then I think what's really challenging is to, like, when I think about the work, like I've been doing this work in fat activism or fat liberation, body positivity, whatever you want to call it. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's been a therapeutic journey. It's been a spiritual journey. It's been like every kind of journey, right? And it's a lot of work. And I think when I think about like vulnerable populations, to your point, these are people experiencing wage-based discrimination already. And then they have this moment that's so where they get to feel like they're just like their colleague, maybe for the first time, or maybe that they have advantages over their colleague, and just what this means in the historical reality of this issue. This is major. And so, of course, you have someone who is already vulnerable. Maybe they did or did not have the resources, the time, or the interest to do the level of work you have to do in order to just begin to unravel any of this, like any of what happened to you as a kid, any of what's happened to you as an adult, all of the work that I think is involved in working through body shame, that should not be demanded of every single person. And so some people just, again, don't want to do it, don't have the blah, 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 whatever. There's lots of reasons why, and they're all legitimate. But, you know, I think to ask our influencers to have somehow like some spiritual sense of fortitude as vulnerable people to stand up against, to your point, these brand deals when they're losing their other source of income. It's just a lot.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to hear because I think a lot of being a body positive influencer, kind of owning that identity and being known for that, a lot of people love to describe them as brave and strong and like tough, someone who can really defeat the societal norms that have been placed and just kind of oppressed us as women and people. And kind of thinking and speaking to like Aerie, for example, you know, one of these big companies that was part of the body positivity movement and has really backed away from that. You know, there is a clip from someone who was a really front-facing name and person of Aerie's campaign. They are the model Iskra Lawrence. And I would love for us to play this clip of Iskra speaking on the Net Worth and Chill podcast about how the money changed once Aerie stepped away from their body positivity mission and campaign. The first voice you'll hear is the host of that podcast, Vivian.
After multiple years of you working with them, they didn't renew your contract when you were 6 months postpartum.
I cried for 5 days straight. I had this rolling contract. It was renewed every year for the last like 5-ish years. There was a point where I had $1 million in the bank. Woo! I'm not saying that's a good move. I'm saying
you felt safe.
I felt safe. You know, I've been told over and over again, I was family. This brand was nothing without me. I built this brand, blah, blah, blah. And then it wasn't even a call from them. It was a call from my agent who just said, yeah, they've cut everyone's contracts. And again, I wish I hadn't attached so much of my sense of self to it, but it was like my identity.
The commonality between those two clips, like, is just this idea of safety. And that is where this really gets me, is that this for some people, you know, there's been this distinction of like, was this a movement or was it a moment? And and this is like the consequence of it being a moment, which is, like you said, giving a marginalized group a sense of safety. And then it's just being ripped out. And I think one of the perplexing parts of this for me has been when, you know, let's say an influencer, for whatever reason, who was openly in a bigger body, decides to take one of these drugs. We've seen more than once that when they talk about their decision to do that, they point to the body positive community as like that gets the blame. Like there was another creator named Tess Holiday. She posted a TikTok that is like a trend, so we like playing it it would just be a sound with no sense. But what she captions it with is seeing another plus size influencer lose weight just to turn around and blame the body positive community. Why that, of all the things that was happening, I would not expect that like the community itself would be like demonized by the very people who were in it. Like what? Why?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? Like, and it's almost like the history of feminism 101. Like this happens over and over and over again. I think definitely I have to start with the fact that the manufacturers and frankly the press have created a runway for this. When I think early on, when I was first talking openly about those emails, for example, one of the things that I couldn't understand was, why aren't you casting the spotlight on these manufacturers and these marketers who are engaging in predatory below the belt tactics? Why are you looking to these mostly feminine people, this community of mostly feminine people? And I think honestly, right, it's sexism, A. B, it's like, who do you have access to? Like, right, it's very hard to imagine like punching up at some CEO living in like wherever, right? Probably in Europe somewhere. And sort of imagining like him creating a reaction video, right? Like he's not going to do it. I presume it's a dude, but he's not going to do it. But so I think there's like, it's like the way in which social media creates that access but I think what's important is vulnerability is all around this access, right? And I think the third thing, and it goes back to the way that I think it doubles back on the history of feminism, it doubles back on sexism, but the body positivity movement wanted to set a boundary. And, you know, there were people within it who were like, this is fine, your body, your choice. I don't care. It's not triggering me. But then there were people who were like, listen, you're gaslighting me. You're going against every stated value that you've had, and I'm not putting up with it, or like I'm having a feeling about it. And that's a boundary. And so what happens is that unfortunately, women having boundaries in public just doesn't seem to go very well. And so she becomes vilified. And of course, again, these companies have created a runway for this language. Like, you know, they're like, well, we're the party of like GLP-1's like, we're the people behind body autonomy. We're the ones who believe in your choice. And so then all of a sudden a boundary gets called toxic. And I think that for me, I'm like, no, a boundary is not evidence of toxicity. It's evidence of an expectation and a feeling, which I think that, you know, at the end of the day, right, like every influencer or content creator gets to decide how they want to interact with those feelings and those boundaries. But the fact of the matter is that people have the right to have feelings. People have the right to have boundaries. And that's not evidence of toxicity, I think.
I love that you're bringing up boundaries, because another thing that really stood out to me from your Substack is you talk about the fact that when GLP-1 companies kind of infiltrate body positive spaces online, they are actually violating this implied consent and these implied boundaries, because let's say you are someone who really loves following body positive influencers. In fact, it is your safe space. And in a way, it's like you're telling the algorithm, I want to see and support more of these people. Therefore, I'm kind of opting out of the creators and influencers who don't really spread that same message. And then when you have a GLP-1 company, let's say doing a brand deal with your favorite influencer, or literally just putting an ad on the subreddit that you love, it's almost kind of like they're tackling your mental health in a way that like they just did it without asking. It's so sudden. And I kind of wanted to ask, like, could you maybe explain a little bit of like why you feel that GLP-1 companies like are kind of violating an implied consent and boundary when they kind of start to infiltrate those spaces? Because maybe there's some people who don't see it that way or like didn't know that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think you explained it pretty well, but like fundamentally, okay, so to get into the psychology of someone who is a follower, like, and who is like a really authentic follower of someone, of one or more content creators in the body positive space. She's not just going there, you know, necessarily because she is a lover of like content. Or, like for example, I mean, someone can love like matcha, let's say, right? And they're gonna love every single matcha thing. This is not tied necessarily to their trauma, their identity, their childhood, like everything they've experienced. They just love matcha. That is not the person who is following body positive influencers. This is a person who likely has experienced body dissatisfaction, who likely has disordered eating or a full-blown eating disorder, diagnosed or not. This is a person who has grappled with weight stigma either in a very, very immense way or in a small way. They are going to these influencers as a mental health practice because for like a therapy is very expensive. Eating disorder treatment is very expensive. So when we're thinking about who's in the community of people following body positive content creators, we're talking about a wide spectrum of people. Like we're talking about people who just, you know, just love seeing cute people wearing cute things, living their best life. There's definitely that person, but there's also people for whom this is part of their recovery. This is part of their mental health practice. And I know for sure that therapists even, you know, like literally in their treatment encourage patients to follow body positive content creators. So I just kind of want to say, like, we're watching the visible people have the impact around GLP-1s. What we're not seeing is the invisible thousands, hundreds of thousands of people for whom these people were part of their recovery. And what does that mean for them?
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about these creators, these body positive creators who do ultimately say yes, whether it's because they were emailed or because they themselves heard about this and decided to try it. We did an episode on Remy Bader, who I'm sure you've, because she's often brought up in these conversations. And it's hard for me to know. I think where I land on it is, again, like to blame her is like a very individualistic way of approaching this when she is under the exact same like societal pressures that and in a way that, especially as a creator who has made her body a part of her content, has opened up an audience who feels that they can speak about it way more openly than, I mean, you know, people with fat bodies online often are spoken about. But like, especially when she's made that part of her content, she is under so much scrutiny about her weight fluctuating even a little bit. And so like when I see this happening, I know there were a lot of people who felt betrayed and that their boundaries were crossed, and I totally understand that. And at the same time, I totally understand her being like, this is awful. Like, it is so hard to exist like this, not only online, but in the world. And this is a thing that can just make that go away. Like, what are your thoughts on the creators who do say yes to these things?
Yeah, I think what's challenging is, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, but ultimately I don't believe in individual blame either. Yeah. That's where I land. I think the challenge is this, that there's not a lot of people, like, I think what people really want is this massive, like, opportunity to follow people who maybe have different views about intentional weight loss. I think what's really challenging, right, is like we're watching a lot of people, a lot of visible content creators kind of take GLP-1s for intentional weight loss. I think if I were going to break it down, I think what we're longing for is a diversity of response. And I think what's really hard is, like, I don't know, for example, if people would be coming down as hard on Remy Bader if they had like the 1,000 other people who are just like, yeah, that's not for me. I think in the ideal world, right? Like, I guess for me, again, when you look at the research of intentional weight loss, it's just so unequivocally like it just doesn't work longitudinally for most people. And it's just so unequivocal. It's almost like we can't even argue. It's almost like you can't even argue about that. So like let's just put that data aside for a second and say, okay, sure, at the end of the day, everyone has the right to pursue interventions, whether they're data driven or not. And let's just say, like, sure, let's start there. I think what people are missing is that diversity. Is that, like, sure, Remy Bader has the right to do that, and I want somebody who is who did not make that choice, because that person absolutely exists. There are plenty of people in larger bodies who either A, don't want to be in a thinner body, or B, do not want to go through the experience that they might have to do to undergo intentional weight loss, whether that's a physical thing or it's a recovery thing. Like for people who have eating disorders, I think I could say with a lot of confidence, like, they absolutely should not be taking GLP-1s. I don't want to speak for every single person, but I think certainly my colleagues in the eating disorder space, they're advocating, and rightfully so, for a black label warning on GLP-1s because they trigger relapses and they lead to new eating disorder cases. So, I think in some ways, I'm like, a lot of the anger goes back to the lack of choices that this customer and this follower just generally has to live with.
Yeah. And on top of that, when we talk about like how some individuals kind of become like the unintentional face of GLP-1s,
right.
I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this episode is because we've been thinking a lot about Serena Williams and how she recently became a spokesperson for Roe and basically has been doing ads of her like showing herself injecting herself with GLP-1s. And on top of the fact that like we as a team were very kind of intrigued by the fact that her husband, Alexis Ohanian, is a investor in Roe, so there's some money there.
Right.
But we were just so, I think at least for me, I was just kind of shocked and maybe a little sad about it, just because, Serena Williams is known for winning. She's known for being the GOAT. She is known for being, this physical presence, this powerful person and body in both like on and off the court. And yet it almost seems like there was a voice inside her head that probably was there when she was a young tennis player that was telling her how her body looked and how it played. And a lot of it played into like racist stereotypes and a lot of commentary that you would think that someone who is so excellent could defeat that. But at the same time, I think a lot of us know what it's like to have a negative voice in our head that is louder than anything anyone else can say. And I just think that it's moments like these where I really took a step back and went like, wow, like if Serena Williams is turning to this, I wonder how that is. And I think what surprises me most is that like I'm seeing on Reddit, I'm seeing like more positive responses than I thought. And I wasn't sure if that was because it was Serena or if it was because maybe there's just a greater acceptance of GLP-1s, but I don't know. What about you? Like, did you have any thoughts about Serena and her ad campaign recently?
Oh, I had such an interesting emotion. It was just grief, like this massive punch in the gut grief where I had this feeling of like, man, our culture teaches women to hate their bodies. Like, wow. I mean, like, and it's like, I think on the one hand, when you see an influencer who's in a larger body, like fat phobia is so pervasive. When you see Serena Williams taking GLP-1s, I feel like it unveils this level to this frenzy that is extremely sad and that's extremely far-reaching and that has these deeper, more sinister roots of like sexism, racism, like all of these things that are at the base of diet culture to begin with. But it's like I think for me, the game changed in my mind when I saw that selfie of her. And it was like, I think the emotion went from a lot of rage, again, mostly at the companies, really, truly, pretty much 100% at the companies, to this sort of like softer grief feeling, which I think anger, in therapy, they say that like, when you get through the anger and into the sadness, that's kind of like really what a lot of this is about.
Yeah. And before we like move on towards, wrapping up the conversation, I do want to like pause on race a little bit and talk about, I mean, this is like asking you like a 101 type of question, but how do fat phobia and racism interact?
Yeah, I mean, it's complex. There's a lot of layers. I think in a lot of ways, fat phobia becomes a dog whistle for racism. And that's been around for a long time. You know, I think when we're talking about, when I think about who these companies are going after, we often think of celebrity. We think of the celebrity face. We think of white people. But when we're talking about who they're trying to make money off of, we're talking about people of color.
Yeah.
Who have been told their entire lives by their doctor, by their nutritionist, by the culture that something is very wrong with their relationship to food and there's something very wrong with their bodies. And when you think about the ways in which racism already undercuts body autonomy, already makes you feel like something's wrong with your body, it's much easier to have these other messages that further pathologize you and your body, which, I mean, fat phobia definitely does that, you know? And so I think that also we can go back to the history of even the construction of whiteness and racialization, which I feel like, you know, I often think of the book Fearing the Black Body, which talks a lot about this, but it talks about how fat phobia really emerged as part of enslaved people and enslaved people's bodies being in contact with your white European bodies. And it was this immediate kind of almost animalization that occurred vis-a-vis fat phobia. And so in general, I think fatness is overlaid like significantly with stereotypes around race, like laziness, like, you know, again, just general wrongness, immorality, all these things that we've been grappling with around racialization and racial politics for a very, very long time. And I have to kind of anecdotally bring it in here and say, I work with a lot of people in the food justice space or who somehow work in food empowerment. And one of the things that's become really clear is that this culture believes that Black and brown people do not know how to eat. And that the culture needs to teach them, and specifically that white culture needs to teach them. And so I think that this is so pervasive. And so when you're talking about who's being targeted, it really is Black and brown people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because you're mentioning that these are long-standing biases.
Yes.
And so that highlights, again, perhaps the ineffectiveness of, you know, a movement versus a moment, and that we can't meet something like that with a moment. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened with like pop feminism, where this long-standing movement, it was like, oh, we can make money off this. And it was around the same time as body positivity. There were, you know, the feminist slogan T-shirts were happening. And then that falls away too. I wonder if when it comes to moving forward, and I realize I'm about to ask a question of like, how do we fix this entire thing? But maybe more so, how can we approach something like this as a movement rather than as a moment when it comes to like continuing this activism?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the iteration of body positivity that we're talking about, where it's highly commercialized, highly visible. You go to Target and you're like, I feel body positive today. You know, like it's like, you know, that iteration of it is a very specific chapter, but it's just one chapter.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see that chapter again. But I think it's important to remember that this is a longstanding political movement that's about freedom and liberation and not about, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, like I monetize my content too, but that there's something more abiding about it that is very humble and it's not glamorous. It's not like, you know, it's not like New York Fashion Week and it's not that. There's a political heart to this that still exists and that has existed for a very long time. Certainly fat activism has existed since the 1960s. And I think that it's really powerful to refuse to, I mean, I know we're watching all the headlines about it, but to sort of refuse to accept that body positivity is dead, because that's like claiming, I feel like it's on par with claiming that feminism is dead or that anti-racism is dead. You know, like a highly commercialized moment that was temporary. And at the end of the day, when there's a high interface with capitalism, it's always going to be ephemeral, because at the end of the day, they're always going to want to go back to pushing the same stuff, the stuff they know how to sell. And there's so much history behind that, and so much like there's so much behind that makes people always want to call anything that's like liberation oriented or justice oriented. There's this desire to call it a trend.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of just want to tell people that it isn't going away, that if these politics and these ideas still resonate with you, find the people who have who are weathering through this storm. Again, and I don't want to like vilify anybody who's on GLP-1s for weight loss, but I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of us who this is a very, very core part of our values. And it's okay if that's not your value, but there are plenty of people for whom it is and plenty of people for whom it will continue to be.
Okay, that is today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to Virgie Tovar for coming on and breaking down this wild, wild west world for us. You can catch more of Virgie's work over on her podcast, GLP-1 Truth Serum. That is on Apple and Spotify and Substack, where you can also keep up with her newsletter. Speaking of keeping up, if you want to watch any of the videos that we played in today's episode, you can head on over to our new Instagram, ICYMI_pod, to see everything we talked about, as well as meme dumps, fun little trend videos. You have to compliment me because I'm a 30-plus-year-old trying to make front-facing videos, and that's going about how you would think.
And if you love our show, you definitely should write a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. We love the love. This episode was produced by Vic Whitley-Berry, Kate Lindsay, and me, Candice Lim. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer. Mia Lobel is Slate's executive producer of podcasts. And Hillary Fry is our editor-in-chief. See you online.
Or in Dove's next Real Beauty campaign.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I love going through Saks.com because it is so easy to find new arrivals from my favorite designers, and I get a lot of inspiration for my personal style. With fall coming up, I think it's time for reinvention. I think it's time for a wardrobe refresh. So I've been going on Saks.com because I have my eye on a few Jenny Kane sweaters, and thank God they have them all in stock. But that's my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. Whether it's a date night, a vacation, a special occasion, or just lounging in style, Saks helps you find the perfect look for every occasion. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.
And Doug. Limu and I always tell you to customize your car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. But now, we want you to feel it. Cue the emu music, Limu.
Save yourself money today. Increase your wealth. Customize and save, we say.
That may have been too much feeling.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.